This is the Table for Two edition of the Deliberate Talks podcast, and I'm your host, Dakshin Adyanthaya, introducing you to significant personalities shaping the circle of marketing and yonder. And in today's episode, we descend into the ever evolving ecosystem of influencer marketing and how brands across the globe are leveraging to reach their audiences in a more organic and impactful way. And who better to talk about it than Neha Bareja, who has delved into the strategic conversation with creating a community for a brand like Misho. Apart from that, Neha has also more than 13 years of experience in building digital first brands, and she has been spearheading the social media and influencer marketing for Misho and led it to become the fastest growing and the most engaging e commerce brand on social media. So, without wasting further time, let's indulge into the conversation about influencer marketing, localization strategy, its success stories, and ethical beliefs with Neha, but right after this intro. And we're back. Hello, Nia. Glad to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, Dakshin. Thanks for having me. I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much. I'm going to start this conversation with a little warm up question. I'm going to ask you because this is based out of influencer marketing and social media. So, if Neha had 1 million followers on Instagram today, what would she be endorsing as an influencer?
If I was an influencer with 1 million followers, what would I be promoting? Um, I think I wouldn't promote a product or a brand, but I would just promote a lifestyle or a way of living, which is be kind to everyone and just maybe try and be a good example. Maybe one of those life coaches, if I can call myself that,
Very
but
cool.
not certainly any product or service per se.
Awesome. Now that we've prepped up and all ready for round one of questions, let's begin with understanding the landscape of influencer marketing and how it's evolved in India over the last few years, and how the brand sentiments when they hear the terms influencer marketing from especially agency heads like us.
See, I think influencer marketing for sure is something that brands are, focusing a lot on. And first things first, it's an industry valued at 1,275 crores. So obviously, brands are serious about it. Someone is kind of funding that whole ecosystem. And also today, and this is something I've seen across the industries I've worked, right? As far as our marketing budgets are concerned, from apportioning like about 1% or 2% of sporadic budgets to influencer marketing. Today, brands set aside 12 to 15% budgets on influencer marketing right from day one.
Right.
How the landscape has evolved, I think it's no longer, as I said, one of those sporadic activities that, when you have a Diwali campaign, let's work with four
Yeah.
campaigns and get out with it.
True.
It's more of an always on strategy because brands have also realized that while it is a good tool of brand awareness, it can also drive growth in terms of your app installs,
Hmm.
first order activations, repeat customers, etc. And if I were to put it simply, I think influencers today are the biggest source of word of mouth for any brand.
Right.
So that is something which has evolved. I think one thing that I've seen change a lot is that diversification has come up in a big way.
Hmm.
Today, if a brand is available both on or present both on YouTube and Instagram, it might not happen that it's the same influencer which is doing the content on both the platforms. It'll be, different influencers obviously
Right.
creating content which is suited to those. Second, it's no longer the game of hype influencers. You need to be legit, you need to know your worth. Thankfully, we are not after just the followers.
Hmm.
We also go after what the influencer is saying, whether he or she is legit. And therefore, out of the whole influencer budget, 50% or 50 to 75% budgets are apportioned to micro and nano influencers because they bring that sort of credibility and relatability, right?
Right.
While we use the macro and the mega, but I think those are for the brand campaign interventions.
Hmm.
But on a day to day, when you have to build consideration for your products and services, that's where a lot of micro and nano influencers come in the way. The fourth thing that I've seen evolve is that today we don't want to work with influencers who are only English or Hindi speaking. We
Right.
don't mind, and this is something I've seen at Misho. Misho is one of the biggest case study of working with regional influencers because if my audience talks in a language, I will have to work with an influencer who talks in a similar language, right? I can't be working with an influencer who doesn't talk the language and therefore has a resonance problem.
Right.
And when we hear the word influencer marketing from agencies like yours, and I'll be very honest, today influencer agencies are mushrooming like no one's business.
True.
Every other call
True.
that I get today is from someone who's running an influencer agency, has access to influencers, etc. So yes, I think the space needs some sort of consolidation
Right.
and also some differentiators rather than just giving me a pool of influencers at a slightly cheaper cost because
Right.
honestly for us brand marketers costs are, I think, secondary or tertiary. It's the long term partnerships, the influencers that you bring on board, and most important, the messaging and the communication. If you give me a one stop shop for all my influencer needs,
Right.
right from sourcing them to communication to getting it executed and also metrics without having to chase for it, then
Hmm.
I think, I mean, it's the perfect recipe of an influencer agency.
Super, super. So, very valid points there in terms of every bit of breakdown and the points that you gave them. I'm going to touch upon each of them in its own way, but I'm going to start with the skepticism that you had about the authenticity of influencers, right? And for that, there are new regulations which have come in. Could you highlight on the impact of the new regulations on influencer marketing in India? Do you see a change? Do you see something nice happening, or is it like people are more careful now in terms of what they're posting and how they're posting?
See, I think from a very long time, the consumer understood that if the influencer is saying something about the brand, he or she has probably been paid for.
Right.
It was never the case that they didn't understand how the
True.
transactions worked, right? It's just that sometimes the way the influencer used to put it out was so convincing with the best of their creativity that,
Right.
and especially on, in industries which are a lot of impulse buying, like a fashion, lifestyle, makeup,
Hmm.
you would just get so swooned over by that content that you'll pick it up and maybe later realize that it wasn't meant for you or your skin type, or it didn't stand to the claims that the influencer has made. The
Right.
second industry, and I think the regulations actually came into effect because of that, was a lot of these fintech influencers who were speaking about, certain platforms who give you all the services and no commission, etc. And then there were some cases where the companies were being shut, etc., which
Right.
actually made the ASCI make the regulations as stringent as they are today. But I think today it's a good place that we are in. We are calling it out that yes, it's a paid activity. And influencers, I think, have kind of navigated it in a very beautiful way. And I'll give it to them on that. That even today, when they say that, it's a paid post,
Hmm.
they always keep on. I mean, some of the influencers, especially in the beauty space that I follow, I've seen that they always say, but the views are mine, the opinion is mine.
Yeah.
And they don't care if, or they don't shy away from even putting out the pros as well as the cons. And I think even the brands are okay doing that today.
Yeah.
Like as a brand marketer, I respect those influencers, and I've had such cases where a certain influencer has come back and said that, you might have a great product, but it's not something that I resonate with, and therefore I will have to decline your offer, and I'm absolutely okay with that. I don't
Right.
want to go to an influencer who just for money say anything,
Right.
and then if the product falls flat, obviously his or her authenticity and the credibility goes for a toss. But even the brand somewhere faces the brunt of it.
Hmm.
So I think the regulations are good. The fact that we are calling it out and it's making it more transparent is good, and we are giving the power back in their hands that
Yeah.
why did we work with them in the first place was word of mouth and the reliability that they bring. So we don't have to orchestrate it and make it look like, oh, it's a mouthpiece of a brand.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, the regulations are nice. I just at times feel that they could I honestly have no visibility on how were they being formed and who were in the committee who formed it.
Hmm.
But I at times feel that they're a bit too much.
Hmm.
Maybe they can be relaxed in a way, and it can be co-created with the ASCI team, the brand managers, as well as the influencers. At
Right.
times, it just feels it's more, kind of inclined towards brands and not giving influencers at least some leeway to
Yeah.
showcase their creativity and maybe not call it out as prominent as they can, but just maybe a subtler version of it.
Right, right. Yeah, it's good to see that the regulations are also there in place to kind of help those people understand the difference between what's paid for and what's not paid for, maybe.
Yeah,
But
true.
another aspect which you touched upon very interesting was the regional language part of influencer marketing, right? And it's become evident with various categories also getting into vernacular languages. What's your read on vernacular languages versus content in Hindi or English, and back it up with stats and facts when it comes to growth?
See, I think brands have increasingly started to understand that the local language commitment goes beyond Hindi. I understand that Hindi maybe has a 500 million strong user base on the internet, but if you look at other languages, for example, Bengali, Marathi, Telugu, Tamil, they also have on an average more than 69 million speakers. Therefore, and with the advent of, you know, smartphones at such affordable prices, with the internet penetration becoming so high, the regional vernac languages are going to increasingly take the pie. Also, I think with Gen Z, and this is a point I was talking to someone the other day, unlike the millennial counterparts, are not shying away from their regional languages. If
Yeah.
they have a certain uh, MTI, what we call as the mother tongue influence in the way they speak English, they are not ashamed of that.
Right.
They take it as a badge of honor. I mean, at least I remember when I was growing up, and if you had a certain, I'm from Delhi and I'm a Punjabi, and if you have a certain Punjabi slang to the way you talk English, I was being made fun of by, people in the
Right.
school and friends. But today, Gen Z is absolutely okay about it. And if you see, that's increasingly also being shown on the way influencers are creating content. They like having that Punjabi undertone to it, or a Haryanvi undertone, or a South, one of those South Indian languages. And that is why today brands are creating content. Another thing is there are so many short form apps apart from obviously Instagram and YouTube shorts that are coming up only in regional languages. You take a takatak, you take a share chat, you take a moj, you take a chingari, you take a you take these apps, and they are just thriving in regional languages because there are enough and more consumers of that content. And
Right.
brands have realized that the moment they start committing to regional content, which is beyond Hindi and English, they need to commit to it, that it's not only those videos being dubbed. It has
Hmm.
to show the cultural nuances. It has to take, the whole environment of that place. And the moment they start doing that, the consumers in that area feel more connected. They know that, yes, it's a brand which will always stand for me. To give you an example, when I was at Max, Pantaloons has a huge market in West Bengal. And if you see their content strategy for West Bengal with their Bengali influencers, whatever, like they have a dedicated 2 month program during Durga Puja that they start as per the shopping journey of people in Pantaloons. And that's why they've earned that loyalty from the market, right? So, regional languages, yes, it cannot just be Hindi, it has to be all the other languages where people are creating content and consuming content on. And I think YouTube again is another example where the regional content, if you saw the 2022 year end report, I think Tamil was one of the most consumed language on the platform after Hindi. So
Right.
brands are increasingly, obviously, seeing the importance and they're moving towards it. Just that a question always comes on cost efficiency, and obviously, we can't. India has 34 languages. We can't translate in 34 languages or create in 34 languages. Therefore, maybe a good regionalization technique of having one or two languages which kind of work in north, central, and northwest,
Mhm.
and then south obviously needs to be given importance to at least three or four of the main languages, because somehow it's not that maybe Tamil will cut across entire south region or
Right.
Kannada will cut across entire south region. So it has to be Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, and then
Right.
maybe Hindi, Marathi, Bengali, which I think kind of mostly covers. Not the most optimum, but given that we don't have unlimited budgets, I think this kind of covers the entire country and makes for localization. The best thing is with the influencers now available in all of these
Mhm.
regions, they creating a lot of good content, they having their cult communities and followers. It's no longer the thing that only Hindi speaking or English speaking influencers have millions of followers. Today even the regional influencers have enough and more
Right.
following, which is substantial. You can always take the narrative forward with them because they bring in that authenticity, they bring that that next door feel. And obviously, the way they know the ins and outs of the region, you will never be able to do it. Like a brand
Right.
marketer will never be able to do it. A translator sitting in an agency will never be able to do it. So
True.
I think, yeah, I mean, creating content for Varnak languages has already started. It's just going to increase even more.
Right, right. And the interesting part is you mentioned so many platforms, so many languages, so many influencers. Now, one part is differentiating this entire thing, right? Now, you're moving from a Chingari to a Moj to a Instagram reel to a Twitter. And sometimes these influencers are present in all the platforms,
Yeah.
creating content in different ways. And there are brands who want to work from the same category with these same influencers, right? So how do you have that differentiation plan or strategy in place for working with the same influencers?
See, either have the movers advantage and kind of just stalk your influencers and put them on a retainer and work with them increasingly, so that they almost become a face of the brand.
Right.
Or second, just, and I think Sugar is one brand which has done excellent in this. I am yet to find this out, that the influencers or the creators that you see in their videos, if they are Sugar employees or they are influencers, but they've
Right.
kind of taken those 4 5 faces across skin types, across skin tones, across age groups, and they just create makeup videos, tutorials, DIYs. The moment you see a Sugar piece of content, even without the logo or without anything, you have, I mean, at least in my mind, I've started recognizing those faces, that these are,
Right.
influencers. So that's another way to do it. The third is for categories where you don't have a lot of influencers, or it just always revolves around those four or five big names. If you were to go after mega and macro, is then have a differentiation in your communication, or have certain properties and IPs with an influencer which is dedicated only to you.
Mhm.
Like, I'll give you an example. While I was with Max way back in 2018, there weren't a lot of fashion lifestyle influencers like there are today, right? And I remember we Pantaloons, Arvind Lifestyle, and then again a couple of others used to Aditya Birla. We almost used to work with the same set of creators. There was Komal Pandey, there was that Boho Girl, etc. What we did at this point in time was that Boho Girl Kritika used to make one sort of a video, which was at that time it was new. Now it's almost every other influencer is doing it, which was called Get Ready with Me. And she used to make 3 to 4 videos per month. We went out to her and we said, why don't you just do this property exclusively with us? Because
Mhm.
we have Western wear, we have Indian wear, we have office wear.
Right.
You do it with us. And it just so happened, which I later found out from her and also from the industry, that people started feeling that she's a brand ambassador of sorts. And the competition almost started not working with her because they thought she's associated with Max. So
Yes.
either you have strategy like this, or your differentiation in messaging and communication needs to be so different. Like what Netflix had done when they launched the 99 pricing in India.
Mhm.
The messaging and that whole creative device of everybody shouting and
Right.
suddenly you are like, what's happening? And saying, Tune suna kya? Just ensure that the influencer is incidental to that piece of communication, right? They were
Mhm.
still working with very similar set of guys that maybe on Amazon at some point in time had, or
Right.
Hotstar had, but that communication just made the whole difference. So, summarizing, have communication as your differentiator because that's what is going to set you aside. Second, try and work with influencers on a long term retainer because what we've also realized when we speak to consumers that once they see a face being worked with repeatedly, they feel that genuinely this influencer consumes the brand and it's not a one off transaction. Third, either do the sugar strategy, just make some five, six faces and they just kind of build the brand. And yeah, or fourth, just create again, that's somewhere linked to communication, just build some IPs which are only your brand and
Right.
that kind of differentiates from a similar looking influencer pool or the same set of influencers.
Right. Right. Beautifully summed up there. What we can do is also sum up for the influencer strategy for influencers. How do they differentiate themselves to get more work from brands?
I think the first thing they need to do is be more involved in the brand. Like, personally, I've seen this. I don't know whether it comes from the agencies or the influencers themselves. Maybe you can let me in on the secret. But when you get the first concept and you read it, at times you feel that this influencer has not even spent 5 minutes on understanding what the ask or the brand was all about. So
Right.
it's a big tick off, right? Because see, while at the first onset incident, it's always a one off transaction. But if I don't see any involvement in that one off transaction, the chances are I'll never go in for a long term transaction to
Right.
begin with, right? So that's something that needs to be done. Second, create some properties or some style of creating content which is unique to you. Now I've seen
Mhm.
this thing which has been started by a couple of influencers where they do a lot of this commentary on their looks, that
Mhm.
or this commentary on the styles, that 5 reasons you shouldn't pick this
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
While it started as a niche, now everybody has started to kind of emanate that. That's a thing which will always be with influencers. It's not something you can't replicate. So I think you will have to, and I think the most important thing is always be truthful and honest to your community because
Mhm.
they'll always be, a loyalist base and they'll always get you higher engagement, which obviously is a criteria on which we choose the influencers. So have a style of your own. Try and reinvent that style as frequently as you can, because obviously styles can be replicated. Unfortunately, have a loyal following. And third, just try and be more involved with the brand and understand what the brand is actually asking rather than be like, okay, it's just another video. I'll put something out.
Nice. Nice. Well done, Neha. I'm now concluding the first round of questions.
So,
You have done well. And now we're moving into the second round of
I
questions.
don't know
This is
how much
the
hate am I going to get from influencers and brands after that, but yeah.
But this is fun. This is where I think, on behalf of the influencers, I get back to you with the second round, which is a rapid fire round of questions.
Sure.
So they might smirk seeing you answer these.
Or maybe falter at these. That's what I wanted to say. But yeah, let's go.
Right then, right then. In 60 seconds, imagine you're trapped in an elevator with the top influencer in India. What would your elevator pitch to them be about your brand?
Honestly, the top influencer in India happens to be an influencer which does not create content for Bharat, or on a day-to-day basis they are actually partnering with a lot of luxury brands, which does not resonate with Misho because we are meant for tier 2, tier 3. We have uh, you know s- price points starting as low as 299. So I'll maybe just chit chat, ask some gossip on influencers if at all, but there won't be any pitch, unfortunately, to you know pitch my brand because it's not a perfect fit.
Well tackled. Well tackled.
No, that's true. I mean, that's actually true. I mean, that's one of the criteria we always look at because see, today if a influencer who's wearing a Louis Vuitton or traveling internationally in a business class starts talking about Misho, then however much I have those ASCI guidelines of saying sponsored, etc., you see through
Right.
it that it's fake.
True. True. Okay. In 50 seconds, five brands you think who are absolutely killing it when it comes to influencer marketing.
I think one I answered sugar, obviously.
Right.
Second is Netflix with one campaign that still stands apart. The third, and I'll give it to Swiggy, I think they have one hawk which they've placed in the team who will just find a content creator who's so new and they'll kind of work with it and create a trend and then everyone's slapping for it. Fourth, I mean, not a brand which I mean, one campaign which really stood apart for me was Sleepy Owl and the mute campaign that they'd done, where in
Yeah.
influencers were kind of putting, the messaging and saying, "Now I've spent so much money." Uh yeah, these four. Fifth, I don't know. I One plus. I mean, I
Right.
love their influencer strategy, especially with launches and also with always on. The way
Right.
they've built that community of photographers is kick ass.
Cool. In 40 seconds, five influencers everyone should follow for their content.
Okay. Uh, I think here recency bias will take in. Recently, I worked with Sharan Hegde, so had a great experience working with him. Very down to earth, very humble, knows his shit. So that's one. Second, obviously Kritika Khurana in the past because she kind of gave us that status of having her as an ambassador. Mm, Three more influencers. I think I follow a lot of stand-up comics, so I like Rahul Dua's content a lot. I mean, that's the third one if he counts as an influencer because
Right.
I mean, not someone whose bread and butter is on Instagram, but yeah, again. Um, then who else? Ankur Wariku for his content, obviously, because if I were to become a life coach, I have to take some tips from him. So that's another person. And fifth, I would say there's this influencer called as Sakshi. She does a lot of content on body positivity and body inclusive content. I really like the way she is always bubbling with energy and creates a lot of good content. So that's fifth. One more on, actually, two more, which I always follow, especially for their recommendations on beauty. One is Shreya Jain. The fact that she's so honest, it scares me as a brand marketer, but as a consumer, I love her content. And one recent influencer that I've started to follow is Nipun Kapoor. She's based in Dubai, but I think an Indian. And the fact that she's so open about her age and she talks about what works for her makes her so relatable. And you'll be like, okay, give me all the recommendations and I'm going to follow it. So I gave you seven, not bad.
That still doesn't reduce the number of questions though,
That's
because
okay. But why
next
do we have a reduction in seconds? Although I'm taking much longer. If you counted, I would have you would have beeped at
we'd
least
have
half
been
the
done.
time till now.
No problem. But in the next 30 seconds, tell me your favorite all-time influencer marketing campaign.
Favorite all-time influencer marketing campaign. I think Netflix Tune Suna Kya, and followed by Sleepy Owl.
Okay. And in the next 20 seconds, one brand you want to work with respect to social media, content marketing, or influencer marketing, and why?
Swiggy and Netflix because
Okay.
of the kind of content and especially Netflix, I'll have to give it to them the way they've started to Indianize the content because when they came in, obviously there was a lot of feedback that it's sort of a lot of English content, etc. Not English but Western content. Now, even with series which are made in the West, the way they started to make the content, especially for the YouTube channels in an Indian way, is really great. So yeah, Swiggy,
Super.
obviously, I mean, who doesn't want to work for Swiggy?
Awesome. And finally, in the last 10 seconds, as a social media expert, if you had to replace the like button on social media with any other Indian gesture, what would it be?
Can I say, you remember Mithun Chakraborty saying, doing this kya baat in Dance India Dance? Maybe that. But that'll be
Wow.
too much. I think then influencers and brands will start lacking that number of likes. Because wo kya baat was content for another level. I don't know if we have such good content which deserves a kya baat of that stature. But yeah,
Super, super. And that's a wrap. Thank you, Neha. Thank you for updating us everything related to influencer marketing. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to you and hosting you. I hope
absolutely.
you had a good time.
I had loads of fun. I thought we'll be discussing some very serious topics and all, but it was good fun. And yeah, I love my job a little bit more after this discussion. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And I wish you nothing but the best for your future.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And with that, we come to the end of today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to all the audio and video channels of the Deliberate Talks and Pixelated Egg. Join in next week for another story. Until then, be curious, be adventurous, and never stop learning. Cheers.